Um, Welcome everybody to this Unbox S4HANA Upgrade to 1909 webinar series. This is the fifth part in the series, and today's topic is going to be manufacturing. We have two presenters today. I am one of the presenters. My name is Raghavendra Mani. I work with SAP Labs based out of Bangalore in the product success, customer co-innovation and content team, and I handle the R&D engineering area of S4HANA. So I'll quickly hand it over to my co-speaker, Roshan Fernandez, for an introduction from his side. Over to you, Roshan.
Hi, my name is Roshan Fernandez. I'm also part of PSSC APJ team. My main core area of topic is manufacturing and supply chain topic. As part of PSCC, we do support the field as well as the customer implementation. And I will be my main topic would be around manufacturing topics. Today's session, I will take over the whatever the innovation has brought in as part of manufacturing as well as quality management. Thank you. Over to you, Raghu.
All right. Thank you, Roshan. So before we get started, quick legal disclaimer that the information presented in this webinar is for information purposes only. So having said that, I warmly welcome you all to this webinar session. And I want to thank our early adopter customers of the S4HANA product. And I want to clarify to you that SAP has committed to support S4HANA solutions till 2040. Having said that, we have to remember that for the early adopter customers of the version 15.11 and 16.10, the mainstream maintenance window, the 5-year mainstream maintenance window, comes to an end in 2020 and 2021 respectively. So we have to, there is a need for us to upgrade to the latest version of S4HANA, which is one of the reasons why we are doing this webinar. So SAP has invested quite heavily in S4HANA as a product, and the solution has evolved very rapidly over the last few years. So the key area of focus for this webinar series is to enable you as our early adopter customers to understand what are the key innovations that SAP has provided with S4HANA in the last few releases in order to make your upgrade journey more successful. So this, as I mentioned, is a 5-part series, and today's topic is manufacturing. And both of us will be covering this topic for you. So from a business overview perspective, I'll be covering the R&D engineering area, which is the initial part of the manufacturing lifecycle, and then I'll hand it over to Roshan for covering the rest of the manufacturing topics. So from an agenda perspective, we have 4 topics today in R&D engineering. We're going to talk about enterprise portfolio and project management. Then we will briefly touch upon bill of materials, and I want to spend more time in the variant configuration section because SAP has introduced a new concept there called advanced variant configuration with our 1709 release, which is very important for you to know. After that, we will transition to the process industry part of R&D engineering, where we'll look at recipe management briefly before we finish off with product compliance. Now, when I hand over to Roshan, Roshan will continue the life cycle of manufacturing and talk to you about the manufacturing aspect. So let us begin one by one. So the innovations, starting with enterprise portfolio and project management, also known as EPPM, have been in place for quite a bit of time at SAP. So for some of our early adopter customers who are already using project management solutions like SAP PPM, commercial project management or project systems would know that even in the ECC world, there were add-on solutions for these products available, right? But with S4HANA and the change in strategy from SAP's perspective to bring everything into a seamless simplified user experience, SAP has come out with this suite product called Enterprise Portfolio and Project Management, which encompasses all the capabilities of all these 3 key project management solutions. So we will start from the foundation. So the foundation of the project management solution is the project financial control and logistics control setup that is provided in S4HANA project systems. So this has core integrations with all the S4HANA core modules. and it is seamlessly integrated with the upstream modules as well. Now, on top of this, the portfolio and project management solution and commercial project management solution act as enablers and enhancers of the project management functionality that is already provided with project systems. So SAP has packaged all of this into one umbrella called Enterprise Portfolio and Project Management. So there is quite a bit of innovation that has gone into this over the last 5 releases, which we will see in the next few slides. So a couple of key points to remember here is from a role perspective, SAP has done a complete re-innovation of the way role provisioning happens with S4HANA. So you no longer have specific transaction codes or authorization requests that you have to raise for getting access to a certain functionality. Everything is going to be role based, and based on your role in an organization, you will already be assigned a certain access for the business processes that require your input. Now, for example, if you're a project manager, irrespective of whether you're using the portfolio management solution or commercial project management solution or project systems, the roles for you are already provided in this particular catalog. And with this, you don't have to jump from screen to screen in order to complete your end-to-end business process. Everything is seamless within the same user experience. So moving forward, I want to show you the different innovations that SAP has enabled over the last 5 releases. So as you can see, SAP has been quite busy from 1511 till 1909, bringing in so much of capability into this one solution suite called EPPM, right? So we don't have time today to go over each and every one point in detail. So what I've done is I've highlighted key areas for every release that are relevant from an EPPM perspective. So I'll just walk you through the whole history of from 1511 till 1909 so that you can understand how SAP has evolved this product. So in 1511, the whole idea was to ensure that we build a stable core data model for project management so that our existing project systems customers can seamlessly transition to S4HANA. After that, once we had this transition ready, the 1610 release was all about making it Fiorified, so enabling the Fiori seamless unified user experience on all these project management solutions and bringing in key capabilities like overview pages and project object pages in order for project managers and team members to run their day-to-day activities with ease. In 1709, we had a couple of big releases. One was the portfolio management continuous improvement for extended project setup. So taking a cue from our previous experiences from the older versions of PPM, SAP invested quite heavily in improving the user experience and also the business process flow from an end-to-end project lifecycle management. So now with 1709, you are able to handle multiple project types seamlessly within the same solution. So be it IT projects or capital investment projects, R&D projects, consulting projects, all of that can be handled within EPPM comfortably now. The other big development in 1709 was the introduction of SAP Commercial Project Management as a core component of S4HANA. So previously, Commercial Project Management was an add-on component, but now with S4HANA, this comes embedded. It is not an add-on component anymore. So this is a big change, and this is a big commitment from SAP to all our customers who are using EPPM as a solution as a way forward. So in 1809, there were further product improvements from the Fiori perspective. Newer and newer Fiori apps were introduced in the areas of integration with procurement, project costing, and reporting capabilities. And also there was a huge Fiori app upheaval in the change request management. So there was a previous, it was like a technology enhancement and everything was made more simple for this particular functionality. So with 1909, SAP has continued its commitment to provide increased efficiency and enhanced flexibility to SAP EPPM and put in a lot of capabilities. Specifically for 1909, the project material grouping functionality was improved, and now we are able to create financial baselines as well. So going forward also, you will see this trend where SAP is trying to simplify the project management functionality as much as possible and also trying to build robust overview pages on top of the existing functionality. So this also translates from a business perspective. So for our customers who are already using EPPM, you would know that the older systems which were integrated with ECC was integrated using batch processes and RFC programs, and there was a higher cost of integration scenarios, and a lot of end-to-end integration was not working out of the box, right? Also for analytical reporting, there were OLAP functionality where you had to integrate with a separate BI system and push and pull data. So all of that has been changed now because SAP has reinvented the business process for project management in S4HANA by bringing in this seamless layer of enterprise project management, which includes cross-project analytics. So now you have direct access to all the key project lifecycle touch points with other modules, be it finance, HR, procurement, or lifecycle management. Right. So now you're looking at a more simplified interface that reduces your implementation effort in bringing all the ERP capabilities that are offered by SAP from a project lifecycle perspective. So this, of course, translates from a user experience perspective as well. So for our customers who are using existing solutions, you would remember that the user experience in PPM was different from CPM and was different from PS because the screens itself were very different and the way you interact with the screen was very different. Now with the unified user experience with SAP Fiori, all the screens are going to look similar and the way you interact with the screen, whether it is role-based or tile-based, is all going to be similar across different product offerings, right? And you will see this trend in other modules as well, not only EPPM. Now, since we have spoken in all this detail to understand the innovation, I'm going to quickly jump into a video and show you how this exactly looks in the UI. So from a product perspective, as I mentioned, SAP has brought these three solutions together. And now as an individual project manager or a portfolio manager, you are able to go into the PPM EPPM application and look at all the different processes that you have access to in one place. So initially you're presented with a Fiori screen. So from a usability perspective, our main goal for EPPM is to ensure that our customers do the right projects in the right way. So in order for that, we want to enable you with all the functionalities that you can have at your fingertips, right? So that's why we have this role-based provisioning over here. So based on your role in the particular business process, you already have predefined functions. So in this particular case, I am logged in as a portfolio manager, and I'm going to jump into my project portfolio to have a high-level reporting overview of where my projects are standing, right, in order to analyze the risk and performance. So here you see a portfolio, project portfolio, and I can see all my projects listed over here. And I have some high-level information related to the planned start and planned end, and I can look at some status, whether it is budget status or staffing status. Now I can also understand across all my projects how my risk on the projects are, which projects are doing better, and which projects are technically feasible and not feasible, right? And then I can also drill down into a reporting view in order to optimize my project selection, to maybe understand which projects to invest more in and which projects to scrap, right? So this is another important aspect of EPPM, because reporting now is inbuilt, as I mentioned, and because we are sitting on top of the single source of truth, which is SAP S/4HANA itself, there is no integration with an external system, and there is no nightly background jobs that you have to run in order to get the data synchronized. So all of the reporting happens in place real time. So if you change your data in your project, you're going to see it on the report immediately. So from here, I can jump into my project details screen and I can go and look at more detailed information. For example, in this case, we are showing you a questionnaire, but all the details are sitting within the same project node, right? So you have seamless access to drill down from the topmost layer of the project until the last cost element to see the end-to-end project lifecycle, right? So that is from a portfolio manager's perspective. Now we are moving into a project manager's perspective where we are going to take the same project and we are going to understand the execution aspects of it. So again, now previously we would have had to probably change the system or change the transaction code or go into a different screen, right? Whereas here you're presented with a similar screen, the only difference is the roles. So again, you have a commercial project management roles defined here, which gives you access to different set of tiles. And today I'm going to show you the overview page for commercial project management. So this overview page lets you do a couple of things. And this was a new concept in SAP with the 1709 release. Now, of course, with 1909, you have many more overview pages for your different project object and other business objects. So the overview page at a high level gives you high level information about all the projects that you have. You can, this is an interactive overview page, so you can interact with this information and drill down deeper, and also you can navigate to the other um, associated objects related to the project. So for example, you could jump into procurement, or you could jump into a detailed view, or you could jump into a financial plan. And once you jump into this detail, you're presented with a detailed screen again in place, showing you more details about the project. And as you can see on top here, we have this navigation pane, which lets us go to different components, either procurement, finance, documents, and risk management seamlessly. So there's no transitioning between systems anymore, and all the data is sitting in place. And now you also have access to all the downstream components of ECC, like sales orders, billing plans, and purchase orders and purchase requisitions as well, all of it in the same place. So from a project manager's perspective, the execution lifecycle gets simpler, and you're able to track and manage your entire project seamlessly from one place. Now, a couple of key points I want to mention, especially related to change management, which is what you're seeing on the screen now, and risk management, is that SAP has invested quite heavily in these two areas of project management in the last two releases. So 1809 and 1909 have got quite a few new functionalities in the change request management as well as risk and issue management framework of PPM, right? So you will see that in the next screen. So here, this is an interactive risk register that is sitting right on top of a project, from where you can drill down to your project risks, project issues, and also your mitigation strategies attached, associated with your project elements, right? So this is basically an overview demo of how the EPPM product connects all the three underlying project management solutions together to give you a seamless experience. So now let us move into the next part of the presentation, which is the discrete manufacturing aspect. Here we will look at a couple of scenarios, one related to bill of materials and another one related to variant configuration. So over the last 5 releases, SAP has made quite a few investments in these areas, and there are a lot of innovations that have been provided for our bill of material engineers as well as our configuration designers for variant configurations. So we will look at this one by one. So from a bill of material perspective, for R&D engineering, the main focus is for us to provide an integrated set of R&D processes across all LOBs. So this is not specific to only one LOB. We want to give this BOM facility for all LOBs, right? So that's why you see this integrated picture where bill of materials, lifecycle costing, change management, variant configuration, and document management are seamlessly integrated. Now, how does this benefit our customers? So first of all, it accelerates the product innovation. And secondly, it lets you target those key customers who are looking for complex and individualized products. So with the advanced variant configuration, you can actually explode the BOM and do a lot of simulations within that advanced variant configuration to give your customers that individualized flavor, which is the need of the hour right now. Of course, this also helps you grow revenue because R&D is now integrated well with manufacturing, and it helps in increasing productivity. So from a bill of materials perspective, again, as you can see, SAP has invested quite heavily in bringing in a lot of innovations. So we will go through this again one by one, or release by release. So again, with the 1511 release, the main focus was trying to establish that stable core data model for S4HANA. Once this was established, all our existing SAP PLM customers who were not in S4HANA were able to seamlessly move to S4HANA with the migration strategies that we have provided. 1610 was all about bringing in a simplification to the document management framework and enabling the Fiorified experience, the user experience for DMS functionalities as well. We also introduced CAD integration in the engineering control center in a big way in this release. Now, 1709 brought in three big innovations, three major innovations. One was the project lifecycle management content search that was enabled on S4HANA. The second one was enabling of the 3D visual enterprise capability on the PLM web UI that was disconnected previously. Now it is integrated. And the third one, which was a big one, which also had impacts on the next few releases, was this access control management, which now enabled integration to recipe management and document info records. Right. So now you're able to search the access control managed object or the access control context controlled object across the enterprise search. With 1709, with 1809 and 1909, we provided a lot of innovations related to bill of materials specifically in order to empower our bill of material engineers to efficiently and intuitively change their bill of materials in real time. So capabilities like multi-item deletion, hierarchical chart display, and mass changes to BOMs were provided, and they are available now with our latest release. So from a bill of materials perspective, if you look at only a bill of material engineer for a discrete manufacturing, the key highlights of these latest innovations would be that you have now you have better ability to search via filters and key feeds. You can maintain configurable BOMs, which will help us in advanced variant configuration as well. Now there is a where used component as well, where you can look at where your individual BOM elements are used across different business objects. And you also have now the mass assignment of engineering change numbers, which is much more easier than it was before. Now we will move into the other part of discrete manufacturing, which is variant configuration. Of course, variant configuration can be used in process manufacturing as well. But from a discrete perspective, SAP has introduced quite a few innovations in this new configurator, right? So with 1610, of course, the main theme was trying to make it Fiori based. So the Belize theme was introduced and it gave a seamless user experience, but this was still with the old configurator, the classical variant configuration configurator, which is also known as the LOVC configurator or logistics variant configurator. With 1709, SAP did a complete overhaul on that and introduced this very new configuration engine, which was leveraging S4 SAP HANA capability. So it was built completely on the SAP HANA platform. This was further improved in the next few releases with 1809 and 1909 by bringing in key capabilities like multi-level configurations and handling of inconsistencies and the ability to reload the master data. So one of the key points I want to point out here, which you will also see in the demo, is the simulation capability. So previously simulation was available, but it was a little difficult to do. But now with advanced variant configuration, the simulation engine, you have a separate Fiori app which you can run the simulation on, and you can chop and change the characteristics in an existing BOM, and you can actually simulate and see how that translates to whether it translates to your customer needs or not. Right, so it is more real time now. So just key highlights before we jump into the demo. As I mentioned, the old configurator is still available, but the key highlight of releases after 1709 was this new configurator, which now helps you support multiple scenarios in the make to order and make to stock setup. Also, this new engine is based on state-of-the-art algorithms and it is future ready. So any syntax changes that happen in the future, this engine is able to take care of. That is how the architecture is built. So of course it is high performance based and it has been performance optimized specifically for HANA applications and HANA capabilities, right? So another thing to remember is the embedded analytics part. So now this engine comes with an embedded analytics component which uses CDS queries. I will quickly jump into another solution demo this time, not a video, where I will show you the variant configuration simulation. So now I'm logged in as a production planner, and as you can see, my roles on top are again different based on my business catalogs. And I have this new Fiori app called Simulate Configuration Models. So I can jump into this and immediately I am presented with this layout page where I can start my simulation. So I start my simulation, I can put in my product details. So I pick a product and I can put the basic information in. And the key is to switch on the trace over here in case you want to track your characteristic changes. And when I click OK, I immediately jump into this exploded BOM screen, which is nothing but the simulation configuration UI, right? So on the left-hand side, you see this exploded BOM, and right now for the demo purpose, it's a small BOM, but this explode feature works on multiple levels as well, right? So here I have the configuration section where I can mix, chop, and change my characteristics, and I can run the simulation. So I'll quickly show you how this works. So I can pick one of the characteristics, key features associated with that, and then I re-explode the BOM, and now you can see that I'm able to understand how my dependencies work, and I can set my configuration status to released, look at my BOM. If I'm not happy with it, I can go ahead and clear these entries and come back and redo the configuration with different selections, right? So it's a completely simulated environment. It is real time, and it is giving you all the details that you require in order to decide whether to take this particular configuration ahead or change the configuration. So this is pretty powerful from a variant configuration perspective. And I think this is going to hit home with a lot of our existing VC customers. All right. So we will move back now to the presentation. So now I'm going to switch gears, and I'm going to jump into the process manufacturing mode. So till now we were looking at EPPM and discrete manufacturing specifically. Now we will go into process manufacturing, and we'll look at recipe management and product compliance. So quick time check on my side. Yeah. So from a recipe management perspective, there have been quite a few innovations in recipe management, but there are only two key innovations that I want to talk about today. So one of them is the recipe finder functionality, which is a very powerful functionality that has been enabled with one of our latest release of S4HANA. And the key advantages of from a product perspective for process industries is that now we are looking at all the information as one source, right? So you have data consistency, you have simplified and seamless user experience based on the Fiori UX, and we also have now the capability to map end-to-end processes for the entire process lifecycle. So previously we had the recipe developer tool, which was quite powerful, but it was not able to handle end-to-end processes, which were having handoffs with bill of material, specification management, change management, etc. But now you can see all of that is well integrated because we are sitting on S4HANA. So this, of course, enables you to accelerate your product innovation as well. So again, we look at the key innovations from a process industry perspective. So with 1610, the BOM simplification activity happened, where we introduced parameter effectivity within Fiori itself. So 1709 was actually a big release from a recipe management perspective, where the recipe finder functionality and the Fiori enablement for recipe development was done. So this provided a lot of capability that was already available with recipe management to be made seamless and introduce to be allowed for it to introduce into the full process. Right. So the SAP Fiori apps for specification specifically were now enabled completely in the end-to-end business process with 1709. So this became a very powerful way for the process end-to-end story to flow through the recipe management framework. Now with 1809 and 1909, we did have some introductions of overview pages, but the key innovation here was the hierarchical view and the formulation of recipes. Now, from a roadmap perspective, I wanted to share this quickly because there is a future outlook to also introduce product labeling and also the machine learning automation processes for recipe management. Of course, SAP is doing a lot of investment in the intelligent scenarios aspect. So you're going to hear a lot about machine learning and RPA, but specifically for recipe management, the future outlook looks pretty good. So from next generation recipe development perspective, you can expect to see an integrated compliance framework inbuilt into recipe management with embedded analytics, with target driven formulation, as well as collaboration, right? So as I mentioned earlier, one of the key innovations for recipe management in the process industry area is the recipe finder functionality. So this lets the recipe developer use this feature to find multiple recipes in this overview page kind of setup. So there's no more running between multiple transactions. Everything is seamlessly integrated into this one Fiori app. So with 1709 and onwards, you have this facility available. Also, the contribution-based formulation is another key aspect. And as you can see over here, this has the drill down capability where you can open it up to multiple levels as well. So from a usability perspective and from an understanding perspective, this makes more sense. So I don't have a demo specifically for recipe management for you. So we will quickly jump into product compliance. So in the first two releases, there was not much innovation done in the product compliance area because SAP was focusing on getting the core functionalities right. And after that was done, I can tell you that for the last two releases, product compliance has got a lot of emphasis, and there have been a lot of innovations specifically in the areas of dangerous goods movement, determination and classification enabled for product compliance. So with 1809, we had this simplified solution for product compliance. So a similar solution like you had before, but it was more simplified with dashboards and Fiori apps. And from a dangerous goods perspective, which I will show you in a demo, now you're able to categorize dangerous goods right at your sales order level. And there are checks on the sales order from the shipment perspective as well as from the outbound delivery perspective to see whether dangerous goods movements is compliant or not, right? So this is a big step. Now, going forward, SAP is also committed to adding more innovations in this area because we see that a lot of our customers now are working in integrated environments across different geographies. And in order for product compliance to work in this area, you need an integrated setup which runs embedded product compliance end to end, right? So you can expect to see a lot more innovations in this area going forward. So before we jump into the demo, I just want to run you through a couple of scenarios specifically related to dangerous goods classification. So as I mentioned, now you have this Fiori capability to classify dangerous goods right at the sales order level. So during your shipment, you can pick what kind of routing you want, and based on the routing and based on the compliance standards of that particular location, the dangerous goods gets categorized as allowed to be transported or not, and then the solution itself gives you an error if there is a problem with the routing and you have to change it, right? So quickly you will see the demo of that. So again, I am logged into my product compliance cockpit, and I can see a lot of Fiori apps associated with dangerous goods, right? So I want to go and look at my display dangerous goods data. I'll put in my material number. And here I'll check whether there is a mixed loading capability for this material because I have to transport it with another component. So it looks like it is in place. So now I can jump directly into my sales orders from here and look at my routing. So for this particular material, we have already defined a routing here. Let me quickly check what that routing is. So as you can see, this is an air cargo type of shipment. Now, for this particular type of shipment, I'm going to check whether the dangerous goods compliance checks passes or not. So there is a check right here on the sales order side, which I can run. And unfortunately, it tells me that the material is not compatible with this mode of transportation. So this dangerous good is not allowed to be transported in this way. So now I have to change my routing. So I can quickly check what is the reason for that. So we can see that the dangerous good regulation with IATA is not successful. So the air cargo for this particular country is not allowing this dangerous good. So I will have to change the routing and make the transportation in a different way. So I will pick transport via truck and run the dangerous good check again. And now it looks like it has succeeded. So this is one part of the dangerous goods check. Now the other part of this is in the outbound delivery, where also the same product compliance integration has happened. So I'll go back to my main page and jump into my outbound delivery screen. So I pick the outbound delivery. And I can quickly look at my outbound delivery in a PDF form and look at whether, okay, I can see that I have my dangerous goods set up here. So I see that there are two components being transported. Now let us see whether we can transport them together or not. Right. So again, you can see that the dangerous goods check is embedded inside the solution itself, and this gives me an error saying they cannot be loaded together. So I'll again quickly check the log to ensure that this is correct information. And now it looks like for one of these elements, I'll have to change the transporting mechanism. So instead of transporting both by trucks, we'll have to change the shipment, and I'm going to change my routing to a rail. And then I do the dangerous goods check again, and it comes back successful. Right. So this is now a very powerful functionality, which is now embedded within S4HANA. And this is available with the latest release of 1909. So with that, we come to the end of the R&D engineering topic. And now I want to quickly hand over to manufacturing to Roshan to take over the manufacturing topics. All right, over to you, Roshan.
Yeah, thanks, Raghu. Yeah. Again, warm welcome to all to the next after R&D. Now we'll get into manufacturing topic. So as part of manufacturing, this is the complete overview of the manufacturing solution with along with the some of the topics of supply chain, how it is integrated. So when I say manufacturing, it comes the first one is the core functionality, where the core the basic functionality where it sits. I have divided manufacturing solution into three parts. One is core scope, enhanced functionality, and the suite of LOB solution, which are integrated with the S4HANA. So let me start with core scope, where core scope, when I say core scope, it comes with the core manufacturing and inventory management, those functionalities. So as part of core scope, how you have, like you would have seen in 1510, 1511 release. So we have MRP and capacity planning as a part of production planning, and then as part of production execution, manufacturing operation, production control, those topics are still. And we have brought in some of the new functionalities in these areas. Along with that, quality management, inventory management, and basic ATP check, along with the integration with the transportation management. So getting onto the enhanced functionality, we have, when I say enhanced functionality, it's a kind of extended planning. So in that area, we have a PPDS. So now with 1710 onwards, 1610 onwards, you have PPDS embedded, and then some of the new topics for the production planning, like DDMRP and production. The PMRP is the new like new way of doing the planning, and along with that, we have integration with the extended warehouse management, as well as now TM is also embedded as part of S4HANA. And when it comes to the suite of solution, it is again, it has integration with the multiple solution like IBP, integrated business planning. So then we have an integration with the responsive manufacturing, like manufacturing execution system, and then we have a integration with the MII and QIM. So those are all the extended products within manufacturing area. So basically, this is like when I say core scope, it is mainly meant for the core manufacturing, and enhanced functionality or extended planning is mainly from the how I can make it better, my planning or optimization. So then finally how I can make it the complete digital supply chain integrated, and so those are all the those are all the benefits which you get as part of all these complete combination of suite of solutions. So let's get into that. So this is the complete overview of the topics which are all spread across different releases. So one of the like when I say production planning, I would definitely recommend this particular app, Monitor Material Coverage app, which is a kind of alternate to the stock requirement list or MD04 report, which was there. So that's the one app which is most frequently used as part of the production planning by the production planners. And then we have some of the inbuilt KPI reporting point of view. See, material scrap, operational scrap, and scrap for reason. So these are all some of the inbuilt KPIs which comes from which is a topic of embedded analytics. Along with that, we have we have PPDS embedded as well. So which is another benefit to the whole product portfolio. So with 1709, we have a DDMRP, the new methodology in the area of planning got introduced, where like all these while we have seen a push type of methodology. So now this is a kind of a pull methodology as part of DDMRP. Along with that, we have brought in a lot of new apps with respect to the capacity planning, which is this is where monitor capacity utilization. This is a very good app where it will help the planner in terms of how to take how to do the how to adjust the capacity planning, how to do the rescheduling. So those are all the things this app will give you a very good information to the production planner. Similarly, much more, say, as part of 1809, we have new apps in the area of especially work center based capacity manage work center capacity app, which will help you to monitor the work center based capacity. So that's also it's a very good app, I would say. And then apart from that, there were some of a couple of enhancement which we brought in as part of along with the DDMRP topics. Finally, as part of 1909, we brought in one new app, especially from the planned independent requirement perspective. So this is also a very multi-dimensional app, I would say, because it's not that you're going to maintain the planned independent requirement, but it also gives you the additional KPI capabilities. Say, for example, it will compare with your actual sales with the planned independent requirement which you have created, and based on that, it will give you the accuracy of that particular forecast. Similarly, we have brought in a new app, especially from the ATP check perspective for the production orders and planned orders. And finally, the another planning tool called predictive MRP. This is also a new planning tool, especially from the medium term perspective, I would say. So these are all the some of the key innovations which I have highlighted as part of in between 1511 to 1909 release. So let's get into each individual topic. In this during this session, I have two demos, mainly from the DDMRP as well as predictive MRP perspective. So let's get into each area a little more detail. So as you might be aware that as part of S4HANA, the lot of improvement has taken place in the area of MRP because of the innovation around the HANA, and so now we have a MRP live. So as part of that, as I was mentioning earlier, the material monitor coverage app. So this is the one where it gives the all new dimension of analytical capability to select to identify a issue material for the, like, suppose if you have multiple products in that, it will be like without this it was difficult to identify which are all the materials are having issue, where there is a stock out situation where production planner needs to get involved and solve that stock out situation. But with this material monitor coverage app, it will give you all helpful information with the graphical, like say for example, if he sees that there is a red indicator in the reporting, so it will tell you that there is a shortage exist against that material, and you can load multiple products, and based on the product he can load individually also. So this is it's not only the this is not only with respect to the planned orders or receipts and requirement. It also gives the analytical capability as well as the simulation capability. This is what we see as part of the material monitor coverage app. So when I say material monitor, when I say the simulation capability, the planner can choose. This is exclusively from the point of view of the procured items. Like suppose if I have a item, against that I will have a multiple against the requirement, I can get the multiple solutions. Say for example, in this I have the first solution is you can change the existing purchase requisition, or the second proposal would be you create a new purchase requisition. So every like a proposal will have the ratings. Depends on the ratings, you can, and the planner can apply that, and also planner can simulate that particular situation along with the impact, how it will, like suppose if I have a 3-star rating, then it is an indication that you can meet your demand as well as meet before the demand date. If it is a 2-star, if it is 2-star, so then you can meet the demand. You may not be able to meet the demand date. So that's how it is being defined. Similarly, like let's get into the next area, manage work center capacity app. So this is it's a very rich in the graphical, from the graphical representation itself one can identify what is the utilization of the work center, and he can, like say for example, a planner can display next 14 days what will be what is the percentage of utilization on those work centers. Is it fully loaded or partially loaded? So those information he can do that, as well as he can get drill down into the work center, and he can add, like say some of the additional capabilities, like when was the first overload happened, and uh, from the input selection screen itself we can make out that there is like a short utilization summary also. Planner would be able to view it. So he can, like against that particular work center, manage work center capacity. Within that itself, he can, like suppose if there is a work center is overloaded, like which is like if the work center is with red, so then it means that it's a overload situation. So how that overload situation can be adjusted, either can by adding the shift, or by adding another interval to the against that particular work center. So these are all the things which the planner can adjust within against that manage work center capacity app itself. So this is some of the glimpse of the work center capacity. So now let's get into the embedded PPDS. So as part of this is with respect to the extended solution, I would say, extended planning, I would say. As part of extended solution, traditionally we used to like in ECC world or before the S4 world. So in the traditionally in ECC we used to manage two systems. One is ECC system as well as the APO system. So APO was under APO, the PPDS used to sit as part of APO box. So if you see here, like as to do the planning along with the PPDS, you need to like you used to manage the master data as part of the ECC, and then you will be doing like then you used to do the SIF activities. So to transfer the material master or a master data to the APO box. So in the APO there used to be a finite run, and whatever the issues happened or whatever the capacity crunch that used to get solved within PPDS, and then for the non APO relevant material, there used to be a separate planning in the ERP system. And this is how together the complete end-to-end cycle use like was happening. So as part of S4HANA, now it is with MRP Live, you are carrying out both PPDS relevant material and non-PPDS relevant material. Both like we do this as part of single run in the S4 world. So with this, the as an outcome, we can do the much extended planning with respect to the PPDS. The next level would be we will be taking the outcome of whatever the infinite planning results we will put to the PPDS, and PPDS will do the finite planning. As part of, let's see what are the changes we have brought in as part of PPDS. So it's a one simplified user experience. Why I say, because with one login, the production planner can access both S4HANA, like within S4HANA, you can access PPDS as well. And also it's all with the new UI user experience, new apps dedicated to the especially in the area of like TS board, detailed scheduling board, as well as capacity scheduling app. So what are the things have changed as part of PPDS? The one is we are going with the simplified master data model. So as part of that, one of the example is the Metal Master. So as I mentioned earlier, we used to SIF Metal Master to APO, and that used to create a product master. And this was the process when it comes to the master data replication. But as part of as part of S4 HANA, now in the Metal Master itself, we have a checkbox called advanced planning. With this advanced planning, so the system understands that it is relevant for PPDS, and also there is a separate planning tab, advanced planning tab. Whatever the data which you used to maintain as part of product master, that we will be maintaining as part of the advanced planning tab. So this is the one simplification happened as part of with respect to the material. Similarly, with respect to the work center also, within the work center, you will find this advanced planning checkbox. So this is again which identifies that which differentiate between non-PPDS and PPDS relevant work center. So the moment when I activate this, the particular work center will be transferred to the PPDS planning. And also, if there is any issue happens for the work center, we need not to look for a SIF queues and to solve those errors. The errors will come immediately. So this is the another advantage. With this, the maintenance of the whole PPDS or the SIF maintenance is completely reduced. The next like see, this is with respect to the work center. The next one is with respect to the PDS. So now with S4, like we need not to separately do the separate integration model with respect to the production version, routing and all. So now with this transaction, with this app itself, the planner would be able to transfer the PDS structure to the PPDS. So this is much simplified form of the data transfer. Again, this is also one of the example for the simplified master data. So this is with respect to the master data. Let's see with respect to the transaction data. So with respect to the transaction data, with one configuration, so these are all the transaction data which are all the transaction data which you are going to consider as part of this PPDS. All those order types you will be selecting, and those will be considered for the PPDS. The moment when there is some issue with the any data, whether it is a master data, in this example, it's a master data, work scheduling data of the material is not maintained. Suppose if I have the same situation, if it was in the ECC and APO combination, APO landscape, so then we used to do the analysis why that particular order is not getting replicated across the system. So like it used to take effort in order to see the complete the sync between two system, ECC as well as the PPDS. So as part of this is the another simplification which happened with respect to the transactional data. So this is about the simplification in the area of SIF. So the next thing is with respect to the PPDS, what are the things we have brought in as part of PPDS in S4HANA. PPDS in S4HANA, like all those functionality, whatever the major functionality which used to exist as part of S4HANA, like say for example, the constraint based capacity planning or simulation versions, simulation or heuristic framework, or rapid mix planning, or model mix planning, or constraint based planning. So those are all some of the industry specific or heuristic frameworks. Everything is available as part of S4. And also it is see, in order to utilize HANA, now the live cache is integral part of HANA. So that is with respect to the HANA, and with respect to the feature and function. Most of the functionalities which you see as part of PPDS in APO box, the same thing, more or less similar functionalities are brought in as part of PPDS. So along with that, the major benefit you would see is in terms of, especially in terms of maintaining the landscape. So now there is no two separate landscape to maintain the two separate system, S4 and PPDS. It is embedded. It is part of S4HANA. So this is one of the benefit which you get as part of the S4. So now let's get into the more detailed some of the new planning topics which got introduced as part of S4HANA. So one is like, see, there are two planning capabilities which new capabilities which we brought in as part of S4. One is predictive MRP and another is demand driven MRP. So let's get into, see, as part of, as a whole end-to-end cycle. This is how the demand planning and this is the first piece where we do some refinement within PMRP, predictive MRP, and the outcome would be fed into the DDMRP. Let's see in detail. So as part of what is predictive MRP? Predictive MRP is nothing but or a successor to the LTP, long-term planning, but it is not similar, but similar to LTP planning, which we used to see as part of ECC. But this is completely a new additional functionalities, new capabilities you will find as part of PMRP. This is mainly from the midterm or long-term planning perspective, which gives the simulation capability in the area of the manufacturing, procurement, or internal material flow point of view. When I say internal, between stock transfers, that level of planning or simulation capability it gives. So you will be see the first the as an input to this PMRP would be the demand in the form of planned independent requirement. So based on that, you will do the simulation. So as a result, what is the outcome of this PMRP? You will see the refined planned independent requirement, whether I can meet, because you'll be loading that demand across uh, the available capacity. Those are all the things which you will be able to get as part of uh, the predictive MRP, and it is full information about the complete requirement across all the, like, see, it's not the first level. The bomb explosion happens at the multi-level, and it will derive what is the component requirement, what is the capacity requirement, uh, and if there is a stock transfer equation, so that those are all points are considered. And if there is what to do in case of overload situation, what to do in case of if the supplier is not able to meet the demand. So let's see, let's get into detail, much more detail as part of predictive MRP. So some of the use cases, sample use cases where I can visualize these predictive MRP. Say for example, product forecasting. Product forecasting, you will you check the feasibility of the forecasting. The moment when you load the planned independent requirement, you will come to know what is the required capacity, what are all the component requirements. So those are all the things you will come to know well in advance, and you can avoid the stock out situation. So that is from the um, planned independent requirement perspective. Similarly, with respect to the capacity planning also, like suppose if I load my demand, what is the capacity required? How it will impact on my production planning, and how it will impact my shop floor, the work centers. So these are all the things, at least you will come to know well in advance. Like suppose if you want to add more shift to the existing production plan, that also you can do. Or suppose if you want to do this some subcontracting activities also, you can do. At least those are all the decisions you can make well in advance. Similarly, with respect to the procurement also, you will be able to see the demand, and as a result of that, you will be able to give the forthcoming requirement to, you can share that with your supplier, and at least with that you can renegotiate the pricing part. You can get at least you might get a good pricing from the supplier, because you are giving well in advance the demand which is on the way. So that is from the purchasing perspective. Similarly, with respect to the operational also, you will have the visibility at least from the midterm and long-term perspective at the component level. So with this, at least procurement team is well equipped to handle the any future spike in the demand, or if there is any dip in the demand as well. So these are all the some of the sample use cases with respect to the predictive MRP. So let's see what is the how the end-to-end process looks like. So as part of this, the starting point would be the planned independent requirement, which is at the top level, which is for the sellable product. So we define, we give the planned independent requirement for the finished goods. So as a result, so then it propagates the demand across the components across multi-level. It's not that single level. The bomb explosion happens, and across the whatever the dependent requirement or the capacity requirement, the spread across multi levels. So this, as a result of this, you will be able to calculate the demand. So the result is the outcome would be you will be able to calculate the at least rough cut capacity of the capacity requirement on all levels of the BOM, as well as you will come to know the requirement with respect to the components across multi levels of the BOM. So once you get this, you will evaluate like if there is any issues, like if there is any constraints, if there is any capacity constraint, or if there is any constraint with respect to the components. So those are all the things you can evaluate. And like if there is like as a like system also proposes a solution with respect to the PMRP. Say during evaluation, you can adopt some of the proposals. Like suppose, say for example, my capacity is overloaded. The system might propose that you can do the sharing of your demand across multiple production line, one of the proposal. Or you can reduce like you can reduce the receipt quantity, and you can prepare much early production. You can start the early production. So some of the examples, something similar. Similarly, with respect to the procurement also, you can adjust the quantity across multiple suppliers. So this is how the complete cycle works. Once this everything is completed, once you see that there are no issues in the planning, there are no constraints or there are no issues across, so then you are ready to go with the release of the plan independent requirement. So you can save the different version, and you can do the multiple rounds of simulation, and finally you can release the actual demand to the production planning. So this is the master data required. So we will be reusing the existing master data, say for example, material master, bill of material, routings, work center. So those are all the things we will be reusing as part of predictive MRP, because whatever the input which we get in within the predictive MRP would be from the existing master data. So there are no separate master data required in order to do the predictive MRP planning. Similarly, with respect to the demand forecast as well. So we will be feeding in the demand forecast, and based on that, you will come to know the results. You will do the multi-level pegging. You will do the root cause analysis, and then finally you will be releasing the refined plan independent requirement. So let's get into the demo part. So here, as I mentioned, the first level would be the maintaining the demand. So here I am maintaining the demand across multiple products, across multiple buckets. You can maintain the demand in a weekly bucket as well as monthly bucket. So let's do the simulation. So this is the first app which you will be using apart from the maintaining the PAR. So this is schedule PMRP creation would be the next level, where you maintain the ID for the reference, the simulation ID. Against that, you will be maintaining the when you're from when to when you're going to do your midterm or long-term planning. So you are going to give the components. So once this is finished, you will see the result within this. So as I mentioned, there should not be any constraints. So here I would see there are 6 capacity issues. As like since we release we have used the whatever the demand which we have maintained. So the against that I see there are 6 issues. So now let's get into the analyzing these issues. So this is say example assembly 1 is there are around 6 buckets. I see there is an issue. So I would you have a flexibility to disregard those capacity issue. You are not going to consider those issues because you are going to handle offline those issues. So with this, you will see that earlier there were 6 issues. So now only there are 3 issues. Similarly, let's solve the other issues. So you here system is proposing the change the existing capacity utilization is 100%. So now proposed capacity utilization is 104%. You can adapt that. If you adapt, so then your available capacity will also be increased. So with that, we have solved another capacity issue. Similarly, we have one more issue with respect to the capacity. So here I am going to solve this by pre-producing it. As I mentioned, well before the demand date, I am going to pre-produce it. See here the original requirement date was on 43rd week. So instead of 43rd, I'm going to use make use of 42nd week because I have a capacity there. So you see that there is a reduction in the capacity issue. Similarly, there is one more issue left. So here you are going to use this required quantity is 90. And instead of because in the production line 1, the available capacity is 0. But in the production line 2, I have a available capacity. And you can adopt that available capacity. So now with that, you have solved that as well. So now you see there is no issue. So these are all the reporting, like what are the issues you have solved. Once you fix all those issues, so you will get a report that how many issues you have solved with respect to the change in demand, with respect to capacity, with respect to pre-production, and is there any unresolved issue. So these are all the things you will get it as part of this. Once you have done all this, you are going to release that into active version. So this is with respect to the predictive MRP. So now let's get into the second part, the next new planning tool called DDMRP. So this is again what is the first thing is these are all the as is situation or a motivation to go with the DDMRP. Like say for example, I have too little stock of the product I need, or regularly I come across stockout situation. My service levels are less. I'm not able to finish my customer orders. So what goal I have to achieve, I want to achieve is the best possible customer service level at lowest possible inventory, which results in the cost. So let's see this in detail. So this DDMRP is it's a innovative multi-echelon pull methodology based planning tool. it enables companies to build more closely to the actual market requirement and promotes better and quicker decisions at action and that planning as well as at the planning level as well as the execution level. So when I say closer to the market requirement means, see, in a typical MRP planning world, what we used to do is we used to load the plant independent requirement for the finished goods, and we used to run the MRP, and MRP used to generate the we generate the receipts. Based on the existing, it will compare the existing stock and demand whatever the shortage quantity that would generate the receipt. But here, what happens is with respect to the demand driven, it's altogether a different approach. The traditional approach of MRP, the push methodology has been taken away. It's all together a pull. So in order to achieve that DDMRP, like there is a cycle we follow. First, we will position, then we protect, then we pull. When I say position, you are going to identify, it's not identify the decoupling points. It's not that you're going to plan at only at the finished goods level. You are going to analyze your complete BOM structure, and then you are going to once you have positioned which are all the products which you are going to do your DDMRP planning. So then you are going to calculate the the buffer levels, and based on that buffer level you are going to do the demand driven planning and execution. So this is when it comes to the methodology perspective. Let's see in terms of the SAP, what solution we brought in as part of DDMRP. So as part of DDMRP, we have the first step is buffer positioning. As part of this buffer positioning, we are going to identify a product where you are going to buffer your stock, and once that buffer the buffer positioning is done, so then you are going with the buffer sizing. So as part of buffer sizing, you will be calculating the different inventory levels. So here it is mostly see, we have a safety stock, minimum stock, maximum stock. So those are all the things, those are all the inventory levels you are going to calculate as part of buffer sizing. Then based on this buffer sizing, you will be doing the replenishment planning and replenishment execution. Replenishment planning, whatever the buffer sizing you have calculated as part of the buffer sizing step, that will be the input to the replenishment planning. Once you have done the replenishment planning, this is more from the expediting the process. The planner can expedite, like if there are if the inventory situation is lower than the safety stock, then you are going to do the expedite process, and you have the analytics, detailed analytics across your buffer levels. So this is in a nutshell where it includes 5 steps to do the demand driven planning. So this is these are all the list of apps which you will be using. So these apps are mainly like from the setup perspective or the configuration perspective. Then you have regular activity perspective. It's not that everything you are going to run, you're going to use in day out. Only some of the applications are you're going to use as part of your daily planning. So let's get into the details of each step. Buffer positioning. In the as part of buffer positioning, you will be able to identify a product where you are going to buffer your material, buffer your in across your BOM structure. So which product? So as part of buffer positioning, you will be identifying the product where you are going to buffer. So like here you will see, you are seeing some of the numbers. you might be wondering what all those number, how it has come. So this is nothing but decoupling lead times. So decoupling lead times is nothing but it's the longest lead time across your BOM structure. So say for example, let's take this as an example. So here I need 3 days for the component and 4 days for the semi-finished, and this is 2 days. So for the finished. So these are all the lead times. Cumulatively, it is 9 days of this BOM structure. Similarly, with respect to this here also, you have 8 days because when you compare this 3 with 4, 4 will be the highest. So then addition of these 4 plus 4 becomes 8. So that becomes the decoupling lead time. So this is also one of the parameter which will be used during your buffer calculation, along with other aspects like average daily usage. So those are all we'll see in the subsequent slides. So when it comes to the buffer positioning, we call it as the product classification. You're going to classify the product. That's the first step in the DDMRP solution. You're going to classify the product. So based on the variability factor, based on the value factor, based on the BOM usage. When I say variability factor, how the demand is what is the variation in the demand across for that product across your BOM structure. Similarly, the value, is it a class item? Is it a B class item? Or BOM usage, is that particular material being used across multiple BOM structure? So these are all the parameters which you will be using in order to classify the product. So similarly, the next topic is the buffer sizing. As part of this buffer sizing, so you will be, the end result would be you will be calculating maximum stock. What will be your maximum stock, reorder point, safety stock, and minimum safety stock level. So these are all the inventory levels which you will be calculating. So as an input to this, there are multiple parameters you will be considering. Like one of the example is the average daily usage. So as part of average daily usage, how you are going to consider your demand across your defined period. So based on that, you will be calculating the average daily usage. So there are other formulas. Say, for example, average interval or decoupling lead time, minimum order quantity. So all these parameters will be considered during your buffer sizing. When I say average daily usage, the average usage of a product or a component on a daily basis over a period. So this is how you are going to calculate the average daily usage. Similarly, you are going to define the interval period, average interval rolling period in terms of days. So that becomes the average interval days, and then you have a individual lead time which will be which you are going to derive it from the Material Master, or yeah, there is a ML capability also to derive based on the transaction data. So, and also we define like the another parameter will be used in buffer sizing is the minimum order quantity. It is minimum order quantity is nothing but a lowest product quantity which an order can be placed to replenish the stock buffer. And then some of the parameters which are derived from the buffer profile. So there we maintain some of the variability factor based on the procurement type, or lead time variability lead time factor. So these are all the factors which we will be maintaining against the buffer profiles. So this is about the with this. So these are all the, like say for example, in order to calculate this reorder point, average daily usage into decoupling point will give the reorder point. Similarly, in order to calculate the safety stock, so this is how, like yellow means nothing but your reorder point into the lead time factor. And then with respect to the red base into variability factor. So in order to calculate maximum stock, so this is the formula. So this is how the buffer sizing happens. So the next thing is the replenishment planning. So as part of this replenishment planning, you will be dealing with multiple new terminologies here. One is the net flow position. Net flow position is nothing but where on hand stock it's a addition of on hand stock plus open supply minus the demand. So which gives the net flow position. And here the replenishment planning you are going to do based on the planning priority. So the planning priority will be defined against each item. So that is nothing but your net flow position divided by your maximum stock. So that gives the net flow position. So net flow position is identified or differentiated by the color codification also. So if the net flow position is green, so then the sufficient stock available in the inventory. If it is red, so then it has fallen below the reorder point planning, reorder points. There will be a, see, against this, there will be a proposed quantity, because the inventory level has fallen below the reorder point planning, reorder point. So this is see, here you will be considering the planning priority, which will based on that you will be against that planning priority there will be a supply, create a supply. So that supply is based on your net flow position, which will derive like whether my planning priority is red, green, or yellow. So that's how your replenishment planning is done. Replenishment execution is more from the just to expedite your planning process. So once you have finished the replenishment planning, so the outcome of replenishment planning would be the proposed quantities. So when it comes to the replenishment planning, you will based on the net flow position, you will see that planning priority changing, and based on that the system will will propose the quantity, how much quantity to be procured based on your buffer levels, which you have calculated in the previous step. So here it's more from the expediting the process, replenishment execution. So here you have again in replenishment execution also, here you will see the new terminology, on hand buffer status. So that will if the on hand buffer status is in red, so then the expedite will come into picture. So in order to, because when it will come, when your the safety stock is goes below the when your inventory level goes below your safety stock. So that's where your the expedite process will gets triggered. So we'll see in the system. I have a short demo for that. So let's. So this is the, as a first step, like as I mentioned, there will be a 5 steps in order to do the end-to-end DDMRP planning. So as part of this, this would be product classification will be the first point in executing the DDMRP. So as a first step, you will be calculating the product. You will be doing the product classification based on the parameters like XYZ parameter, ABC parameter, ABC classification, demand variability, value variability, and BOM usage. So based on those parameters, you will be executing the product classification job. So the system will give you the input based on the, see, you have calculated the variability factor, you have calculated the value indicator, you have calculated the BOM usage as an outcome of the product classification job. So the next step is to do the identify a product which you are going to buffer. So here I'm going to select these materials for the DDMRP relevant material. So the moment when I say buffered material, like those materials will be relevant for DDMRP. So here, as part of DDMRP, you will be using a separate MRP type called D1. So if you want to do the planning, so DDM D1 would be the MRP type in order to do the DDMRP. So here, this is nothing but a mass product. I'm going to do the mass maintenance of the product. All those all those 6 items I'll be considering for the DDMRP. So this is the next on the analysis part. So here, this is the finished goods. This is the product flow. This is the component, semi-finished and finished, where you will see the what is the lead time. This is 12 days, 5 days of that individual product lead time. And then you will see the value indicator. And similarly, there are much more to this. Apart from that, you will see the path complete upstream to downstream path of the complete BOM structure. So now we will calculate the decoupling lead time. So here, as part of this decoupling lead time calculation, you will be giving weightage to the 3 factors. If it is material is manufactured, so you will be giving the weightage. How many? What is the weightage? What is the value you're going to give for the in-house produced item? Similarly, if you are procured and if it is a stock transfer, all these parameters will be considered in order to calculate the decoupling lead time. So this is the next level, next app which you are going to use as part of the DDMRP. So once decoupling lead times are calculated, the next step would be calculation of the buffers. So in order to do the calculation, you can see as I mentioned, decoupling lead time is one of the input which you need. And then suppose if whatever the whatever the buffer levels are proposed, so those buffer levels you can directly adopt those buffer levels. Or if you want to do the adopt with tolerance, like I want to change some 10% up and 10% or 10% down, or either I can increase or decrease my the percentage, the tolerance. So that also you can do. And if you want to do the based on the rolling interval or a fixed interval, that also you can do for the average daily usage. So this is once this is calculated, so the buffer calculations is completed. So this is the third step you have completed, and the next step would be the this is more from the analysis. So where this is the average daily usage analysis. As I mentioned, across your say here the horizon is 10 days. In that 10 days, what was your demand? So that becomes the average daily usage. And decoupling lead time. So as we have executed in the previous step, so for that product, what is the decoupling lead time? So that is also being considered while calculating the buffer levels. So this is the buffer level where the safety stock and reorder point and a maximum stock level. So these are all these 3 inventory levels are calculated as an outcome of this buffer calculation. And suppose if you want to adjust, like suppose you want to increase or decrease the safety stock or maximum stock level or a reorder point level, you can do for a particular bucket also. So here I am changing that, adjusting that buffer levels. The next level, the next would be the replenishment planning. As I mentioned here, you will be seeing the different nomenclature altogether. So here, like, say if it is the this is the replenishment planning is based on the planning priority. So if the planning priority is orange or a red, so then which means that there is a the shortage is there. You need to plan for your buffer level. So that's the reason you will see the planning priority is orange color. And then against that, see, this is the net flow position, which is difference between what is your on-hand stock and the supply and the demand. So based on that, your net flow position is calculated. And see here, it's a red, on-hand buffer is red. So that's why you need to do the replenishment planning. So we have a like the moment when I click on this create supply, it will generate the procurement proposals. So this is the proposed quantity. The receipt element would be for this once I execute the supply. So then once it is done, so we have finished the replenishment execution part. So the next would be expediting the replenishment planning is completed. So the next step is the replenishment execution. So here also, if your material inventory levels are below the reorder point or below your safety stock, so then you will see the red in the on-hand buffer status. So which means that against that material, there will be a expedite process. So this expedite will speed up your planning. So this is about end-to-end. You can, like, in order to expedite, you can change the dates or you can change the quantities. So this is how the end-to-end the planning which happens as part of DDMRP. So this is about the DDMRP. So now quickly get into the QM part. So as part of QM, we have brought in a lot of functionalities, especially in the area of quality inspection, quality control. When I say quality, when I say quality engineering, as part of quality engineering, we brought in some of the new feature and function which was not there in 1511. Which is called FMEA, and then we have lot of features and functions, lot of new apps which we have introduced as part of quality inspection. We'll see in detail, and also we have some of the new process. Say for example, defect management is a new process which we brought in as part of quality management. So let's see, this is the overview of the solution where we have a quality planning, quality inspection, complaint management. As part of quality planning, basically you are preparing the data for how you are going to do your inspection planning. So it is applicable across your procurement or a production area or a sales area. How you are going to perform your quality inspection. So this is with respect to how you are going to generate your inspection lots, how you are going to do your sample management, then how you are going to handle your complaints, maybe against like maybe with respect to the supplier or a customer or internal complaints. And we have some of the apps which are mainly for the especially from the embedded analytics point of view. Very good apps are available now, which helps the quality technician or engineer in identifying the, like, say, defect material. So, and then we have a audit management, as well as test equipment management. So these are all the some of the key areas within quality management. So I'm going to touch upon some of the key innovations. Say in that one is the result recording. So now we have, as part of 1909 release, we have brought in new app, especially to do the result recording in a tabular form. What is so different as part of this? See here, you can select multiple different inspection results, and against that inspection result, you can do the in one within one screen itself. You can load the inspection results. As you can see here, it's more of the tabular form. So it is it's a very good app, especially from the point of view of result recording. Similarly, we do support embedded EWM integration within S4. So these are all the inspection types which you get as part, which will be used uh, uh, as part of this EWM and QM integration. So these are all the inspection types and inspection origins, which will be used as part of the combine as part of this QM EWM integration. This is what I was referring, a complete new process, new functionalities which we brought in as part of defect management. So you can create a defect either manually. You can do the you can create a defect, or you can create a defect based on the result recording. If the valuation gets failed, so then it will generate a defect. And similarly, we have OData APIs, which you can you can generate the defect by the sensors as well. Through the OData, you are going to have a integration with the sensors, and then that will identify the issue and generate the defect. The other area is you can generate the defect by the Copilot also. So how you're going to solve this? We have a quality task process in place. Against that defect, there will be a quality task assigned. Similarly, we have a 8D process in place in order to do the complete root cause analysis, the fixing the issue. And also against the defect, you can have the quality notification also. And finally, we have some of the machine learning capabilities with respect to the in order to define the in order to identify the right defect code group. So this is how like now you can create a defect, a generic defect, irrespective of any object. Otherwise, in quality notification, you used to create your quality notification against your sales order or a production order or a purchase order. So now with this record defect management, you can define the defect. You can record the defect without any object. So against this defect, you can maintain different. There will be a different statuses in the defect, and this whether it is in progress or complete. So these are all the different statuses which you get as part of this defect. And then you can assign a processor against the quality task. You can define the dates. So further, like once you create a task, it will come on to your task, my task list, and you can the as a quality technician or planner, you can see that there is a quality task assigned to your name, and you can work on that. And this is what I was referring, the ML capability which we brought in as part of defect management. Here, system, based on your past defects, system will propose the right defect code, which will help in identifying the right defect code. And subsequently, it will identify the right um processor. So this is the quality overview page, which you see here. There are multiple cards are there. So in that, like some of the popular top defect codes, top defect, defective material, and inspection lot with the defects. So this is in little more detailed like views. So this is about the quality management. So the last part is the so these are some of the apps which are introduced across these multiple releases. This is a repository of the apps. So let's get into the next topic, which is complex manufacturing. As part of this complex manufacturing, see, as a core manufacturing, we used to handle with the master data like BOM, routing, and all with without integration to the some of like say for example in this 3D visuals or some of the complex like in order to handle the complex manufacturing scenario, we like if your production is not so complex, we used to manage within these areas. Like suppose if you have a complex manufacturing in place, so then the as part of S4HANA, we are having another, like under the manufacturing umbrella, we have another sub module called PEO, Production Engineering and Operation. So this is nothing but the PEO bridges the gap between production engineering as well as the manufacturing. So how by converting the like EBOM to MBOM. So this is where like production engineering will come into picture. The this is the first area of integration within like S4. So with the core manufacturing, and then it has some of the added functionalities like the handling the 3D models. You can assign the 3D models against the BOM components. These are all the some of the capabilities which you do as part of PEO. Similarly, you have there are some of the new processes called action logs, buy-off, genealogy. So these are all the new processes which we are introduced as part of this SAP PEO, production engineering and operation. This is PEO is more to perform the comprehensive change impact analysis to identify the object which are affected by change and decide how to introduce a change. So this is the main core capability of this PO. And also, as I mentioned, the 3D visuals. So you can do this 3D visuals. You can add this 3D visuals against your bill of material, and animated work instructions also you can add as part of this. So this is in a nutshell with respect to the PEO. Yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you. There are some of the subsequent, like suppose if you want to explore some more details about this topic, these are all the some of the links where you can explore that.